out of the 5 red-zoned counties. Also joining us in studio right now, Gloria Oroba. Always a pleasure to have you with us, a youth policy analyst with definitely a keen eye in the political landscape in the country. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's start with the latest. Perhaps on the front page, it's all about speculation as Deputy President William Ruto is reported to have met the Deputy Party Leader of ODM, Wycliffe Oparanya, just yesterday, and a lot of speculation is rife. And talk is ongoing of a possible coalition between the ODM leader Raila Odinga and Wycliffe and Deputy President William Ruto. But of course, the Deputy Party leader, who also happens to be Kakamega Governor, has caused a stir this week in terms of his take on the BBI process, many speculating around those comments where he mentioned that perhaps more emphasis should be put on fighting the COVID-19 in terms of purchasing vaccines, rather than pushing for a referendum while Kenyans' plight is not heard. Let's start on that particular note. Kasim Tandaza, your take on the speculation that is currently ongoing, because later on we'll definitely talk about the political realignments and what this means going into 2022.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, our viewers. I think it should be very clear to Kenyans that us politicians are not enemies amongst ourselves. We've had all the different types of leaders from the political divide talking, and they will continue talking. There is nothing strange at all from where I sit. Not only the deputy party leader meeting the deputy president, but even if it was the party leader himself meeting the deputy president. There is so much to discuss amongst them, but basically we are looking at the 22 matrix here, and we cannot wish that one away. So I know people normally, especially the normal mwananchi or the ordinary voter, jumps into conclusions so fast. But to me, leaders will continue meeting. Leaders are never, the political leaders are never enemies. We have the One Kenya coalition on the other side. NASA definitely is dead, so there will certainly be some form of coalition, some form of crafting. You cannot even rule out the One Kenya coalition working with ODM or any other party. After all, he met one of the deputy presidents, deputy party leaders of ODM. Remember, the second deputy party leader of ODM is His Excellency here, Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, who has even put in his application to be the flag bearer of ODM. Remember also, as far as I'm concerned, ODM themselves have actually come into the open and said the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga is not on the ballot technically, because there were applications which were to be put in. Okay. The deadline passed, he didn't put in his application. So by their own rules, by their own regulations, it rules him out. But of course, this is politics. They can change the rules. They can change the rules of the game, and it's again on the ballot. But I'm looking at that coalition, if it were to be just between ODM and the DP's outfit. I think the elephant in the room finally would be who deputizes who. And I think that is where now, that's to me where I would say the rubber is the tarmac. But for now, Kenyans and viewers, let's be prepared for more coalitions, for more formations, for leaders talking from whichever divide. Yeah. And this is a lesson to the voter, to the ordinary mwananchi, but that they should not take so hard positions right now, to the extent that now they become antagonists amongst themselves, and yet the leaders who we would have assumed will never talk, they're talking.
Okay, well, yes. Noted. Gloria Oroba, what's your take on this? Because politics is definitely fueled by interest. So if you share an enemy, the possibility of working together might be quite high. Are we reading too much into this, or should we smell the coffee brewing?
One of the things we should know is that in politics, there are no permanent enemies. They're just permanent interests. And as we know, politicians are always trying to maintain their positions or get into power. So what we are seeing now and what we are going to continue seeing in the next couple of months, because I think we are now 14 months to the next general election, is a lot of collaboration, a lot of alliances. People are going to jump ship from one camp to the next, depending on their interests. And I think it's been very clear that Governor Oparanya has been unhappy in ODM. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that it's not only those who are unhappy just in ODM, but also in Jubilee. So I think by March next year, they'll be free to, ship camp from wherever. And this is what we call the transfer window in politics. Yeah. So I believe actually that just as my co-panelists said, we shouldn't be taking very hard positions as voters, because as you can see, the politicians are ready to collaborate with their enemies, so to speak, are ready to collaborate with anyone at this point who's actually going to, move forward their agenda. Okay. But what's very interesting to note is that Raila Odinga is the man of the hour. Everybody is talking about we are ready to work with Raila Odinga, we are ready to have talks with this and that. And just 3 months ago, he was not necessarily one who was being sought for. We've seen the Kenya One Alliance, the former KANU boys, also saying that they're willing to, work with Raila Odinga. So I think give it 2-3 months and we'll definitely get our true north as to where things are going. Okay,
Professor Gitile Naituli, of course, a lot is banked on the BBI. Once it passes or goes through the popular initiative, we'll definitely see more mass defections, political realignments. Talk to us about your observations right here, quite briefly.
Me, I'm surprised about my colleagues today. It's not bad what they are saying. What is surprising is the lack of interpretation of what is really happening. What is happening is this country sank very low from 1963. It has never woken up. These alliances, you could say they are driven by interest, but they are driven not by national interest, by selfish political interest. National interest would mean that these people coalesce because they have an agenda for Kenya, and that agenda in a Caribbean, it is near one another. So you go because you are like-minded. That is not what is driving in this alliance. This is greed for power, greed to access power to do what with it, to serve Kenya. No, greed to access the corruption trap. All of them. None of them is being driven by ideology, which is supposed to move this country forward. That is why it's so easy for them to move from one camp to another. So number two, I really have to wait and see where Raila becomes the man of moment. Raila was the man of moment when Chief Justice Maraga gave him an opportunity for a rerun. He ran away from that opportunity, went to the streets, and when he went to the handshake, which was good for us as a country, I don't see how that handshake shaped its policy. The policy that made some people die in the streets, made others injured. I don't know whether we are so stupid as a country, collectively foolish, that we can't see that Raila actually sacrificed those Kenyans. And then for nothing in terms of policy, because the debt went up, the misery went up. Raila is part of the Jubilee mess today. He is part and a parcel. So if this country wants to redeem itself, it needs to be honest with itself. It needs to address leadership failures. It needs to address our failure to have a belief in Kenya. Our failure to adhere to Article 10 on patriotism and nationalism. Okay. Because patriotism and nationalism simply demands that our leaders believe in something, not in greed, not in corruption, not in seeking power for selfish end, but seeking power to serve us.
Okay, so, well, definitely the ideology part will poke holes into it because, I mean, looking at the pre-election pacts that were agreed upon before 2017, a lot can be said about them right now, bearing in mind how the bigger brothers might be dealing with the partners in the coalition. We'll get to talk about this much more, but it has been covered extensively in the papers. Page 14 of the Standard, even as page 6 of the Daily Nation highlights this. Gentlemen, even as we enjoy the new look of the Standard, allow me to start with Gloria right now. I mean, one of the main stories is around the mystery on the kidney issue, where we highlight the plight of one particular patient who learned that the key organ, which is the kidney, was missing after 2 hospital visits due to persistent pain in the abdomen. And doctors have not given answers to her burning questions. Of course, the Doctors Association coming out strongly saying that definitely once she files the complaints, will definitely look into the possibilities of what could have happened, but it points to the bigger picture around organ trade, the secretive organ trade, and even as we look at that, the laws that sort of look up on the organ tissue donors and the limbo, especially after it collapsed. What's your take on this?
Can you imagine waking up and actually finding out that you are missing a kidney, literally? I think it's one of this story for me just highlights what has been happening in this country. There is an underworld where we have a lot of trade of this kind of things, of kidneys, of, you know, body parts, of even children. So I think one of the things that we need to actually look into is, as you said, the laws around our medical sector in terms of now, for instance, who is she actually going to hold accountable? As you've seen, they've actually written that one scan shows that both her kidneys were intact, and another scan then shows that she's missing one kidney. I mean, where do you even start? Who do you even report to? You know, what is the process of reporting a missing kidney? These are some of the things that we've never really thought about as a private citizen, and I'd like to actually commend the Standard for highlighting such stories, because there's a lot of this happening behind the scenes. And now, actually, as a Kenyan, if you are going to hospital, this is one of the reasons why you might want to probably have someone, take you there, and, some of the things that are happening. Because I think it's... where do you start, Jesse? Who do you start complaining to? Do you go to the police station? Do you go to the medical practitioner board? Where do you go to complain of a missing kidney?
Well, that's a definitely pertinent question, even as she was encouraged, of course, to actually go to the medical board right there, file a complaint with the medical board, and perhaps they will delve deeper. But they mentioned that perhaps the worst case scenario could have been negligence, but there's so many possibilities around this. Kasim Tandaza, legal framework or lack of thereof is definitely an issue that needs to be highlighted, especially on transplants, which is quite long overdue. The parliamentary team, as we're told by the Standard right here, rejected a push by the Health Ministry to have all body parts, including fluids, regulated under one broad law. Talk to us about this.
Well, I think it's high time, us as the legislators in this 12th Parliament, to relook into the laws pertaining to body parts and organs. So for me, I will actually be very brief on this, that I will be amongst those. Personally, I take it up as we resume Parliament with our researchers and see which other loose ends are actually missing. Remember, this is not the first time. I'm not sure if that case was concluded of another medical doctor, and for that case, a senior medical doctor who has been in court for harvesting organs illegally. Well, it's yet to be concluded. So this is not the first time. And probably most of the people who have been mishandled like that or mistreated are not even aware. They might not be aware, or they might not even be able to voice out and be heard, like this particular patient. So to me, I think as parliamentarians, as legislators, we need to look at these laws afresh and see how we can really assist ourselves. We know there will always be wrong people, even in all professions. I'm an engineer, there are rogue engineers, and it's not any different from the medical profession. The worst bit about this is what I know is that also the medical profession has had a history of defending themselves even when they know that something has gone wrong. So It's unfortunate. I don't think there'll be much which will come out, even if she complains with the medical professional, the board itself, because previously we know that they always tend to protect themselves. The same with the police. If you are mishandled by a policeman and you go and report, the chances are that they'll try to protect their own. So to me, the way forward is to relook these laws afresh, which I will take up as a legislator.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to that, even as Parliament has definitely taken a recess. Looking forward to once it resumes. But Professor, your quick reply into this particular story highlighted on the Standard?
Well, it's another sound indicator of our level of morality also as a country, because this organ harvesting has to be done in a hospital by doctors who should know better because they have gone through ethics. They are probably going on for a long time without the government knowing about it because our supervision levels are very low. It's an indication that we have put materialism above humanity as our people. It's a clear indication that we need to revisit ourselves and they see whether we can be human again, because we used to be human. And therefore, this is a wake-up call. It's a lesson. And I'm glad Mheshimiwa says he's taking up the matter. But I just want to remind him that our books are full of anti-corruption laws. The corruption is taking place right in front of his eyes. We are told in the beginning of the COVID, there was roughly, if this is true, those fellows were using 20 billion daily. When we remember Decry would use 36 billion, then you wonder how many roads and bridges were built since COVID broke out. And so, our morality is wanting. And I don't know how we address that, because that will not be able to address it by the laws. Mheshimiwa is suggesting, because the other side, we have enough, but we are still doing the wrong thing. You see, there's some section in the Bible which says, when you know what is right to do, and you fail to do that right, you have committed a sin. This is 80% Christian. We are committing a sin against this republic and against the future generations.
Okay, well, the moral question definitely put forth. Kasim Tandaz, I'll start with you, even as you perhaps give us a right of reply, because later on we'll definitely put you to task around the accountability factor, especially since Parliament does play a key role in terms of the loan process, the authorization role. We'll definitely talk about that. But be that as it may, there's no special parliamentary sitting to discuss the BBI. That's according to the speakers of the two houses, even as the committee insists that the final report will be ready for debate once Parliament resumes its session next month. Perhaps talk to us about the strict timelines that the BBI bill will be facing once Parliament resumes, if we're set to have it, the referendum between June, July, as it was predetermined by the proponents.
I think it is a very clear path, Jesse, and our viewers. And I know Senate put their Kenya Gazette yesterday to have their special sitting on Tuesday. Ours has not been gazetted, but it could also be there next week to be officially communicated. And my position about the BBI document is let's have it behind us. It has created a lot of unnecessary noise and a lot of unnecessary debate, given that the general public appended their 1 million signatures plus, and given that the counties passed it unanimously, so to speak. Our role in Parliament, as I've always pointed out, and it is clear that is the law currently. We'll debate it. Whether we pass it or not, it will go to the president, and the president also has an option, but to take it to the referendum. The earlier the referendum comes, the better. Let the voter, the general public, the Wanjikus and the citizens of this country decide on this vote, and that is where the ultimate decision will be taken. But for now, as I stand, the BBI document, the way it is, of course, it can't be 100%, but the way it is, to me, it's a document that needs to be passed so that we can move forward. I know there are those who are idealists like Professor, because as he was addressing us initially, he was addressing us from an ideal point of view. But let's appreciate we are not ideal, so we need to go to the practical point of view and see what to do. Otherwise, if we insist on what the Bible says, the Quran says, you don't do this, you don't do this, that is true and we agree. But we know that that is not the reality on the ground. So we need other measures to make sure that somehow we achieve what we can achieve practically. So to me, July is too far. It can still even be done in June, because unfortunately there is no minimum time that once the president once we debate it, assuming we debate it this week, and whatever result we take it to the president, it doesn't say that the president needs to stay with it for 14 days or 30 days. He can as well take it back to IBC for the referendum within a few hours. And to me, I think that should be the way to go. Okay, let me bring in Gloria into this conversation. Of course, the process has faced a couple of challenges. During the public hearings, we saw the joint committee being torn apart on whether to actually open the bill for amendments or just adopt it as it is. But there are legal hurdles standing in the way as well. What's your observation?
I wish the National Assembly and the Senate was as motivated as they are to call for special sittings for issues such as the pandemic, for issues such as how we are going to vaccinate 50 million Kenyans, for issues such as our missing 300 billion for the COVID, from the COVID kitty. I wish these special sittings that we are saying we're in a hurry, let's call for a special sitting because we must tackle this before June. We have tight deadlines. I wish they were actually dedicated to initiatives that we need at the moment. For me, I think reggae has stopped. And as much as we want to say we are on a pause or what or this, there has been a lot of challenges, not only the legal challenges, but as well the time frame, because you know that if we are not able to go for referendum, is it 6 months before the next election, then we actually can't have the referendum. At the end of the day, I think if you ask the drivers of this initiative, what are you really trying to achieve? And why are you in such a hurry? And is that objective actually going to trickle down to the benefit of Kenyans? I would say no. Let's look at how we are doing as a country in terms of vaccinating the 50 million Kenyans that we have. Do we have enough vaccination? Are we going to tackle this in a way that we can actually encourage that some of these industries can open back up? Our education sector can go back up, because we've closed schools. Let's look at the issues that we have now. We have the ARVs that are stuck at the port because of tax-related issues. Why are we not pushing our representatives, the member of parliament, to actually go and represent us as other people and figure out, push the executive or give oversight to the executive to basically ensure that those ARVs are actually released, whether it's an issue of giving tax exemptions or getting into an understanding with USAID. Those are the kind of issues that we would like to talk about now. And by the way, Jesse, another thing that we need to address. We are in a place where you can see a lot of households are even resorting to suicide, murder, because there's so much frustration in terms of our economy. There's so much frustration in terms of family units actually being able to sustain themselves. What are we actually doing to as representatives of the people, and I'm talking to the MPs and the senators, is that where they are is that what they are really focused on? Instead of actually, going back to their people and trying to say, okay, let us prioritize the issues here. So definitely a matter of priority right there. But just a point of correction, progress was made on the ARVs as the government did sort of waive the tax issues that surrounded that particular consignment. But
Professor, your brief take on this, even as we talk about the BBI, roughly questions do surround the priority around the constitutional amendment path that the country is taking right now. What's your brief take on this?
Let me remind my friend, Mheshimiwa Kasim Tandasa, that there is two significant developments that he doesn't seem to be aware of. One is the president is injuncted by the court from dealing in any way or forwarding the findings of parliament, because I guess the court is now beginning to grow up and realize that the parliament is an appendage of the executive, so it will do whatever the executive wants, from accepting the decision of that parliament on the BBI. The IBC is injuncted against forwarding any question for referendum consideration until the consolidated petitions are heard. Those rulings are expected in June. After that, you probably expect appeal from either side, basically, because you don't know which side is likely to go.
Okay.
But looking at the whole story of the BBI, and I want to support the last speaker in this panel, is that this, I don't know who is advising the president or the former prime minister, because the former prime minister used to be a really reasonable, good Kenyan all these years. I don't know what went wrong in between here, but this thing is making them look out of touch, insensitive, and even sadistic. Because when this disease is weighing so heavily on the people of Kenya, economically, both economically, because of course the economic was a mess before the COVID came. So now you have personal impact by the death it is generating. Then you have the other impact the speaker just mentioned about the economic situation causing people to turn against one another, because that was usually people do when they're in a problem. Right now it's family against family.
Okay.
Soon it will be community against community, because we tend to blame our neighbors for the misery caused by the people at a distance. Instead of looking at how to deal with this, we are talking about the changing in the law, and not even the changing in that law legally. This constitution offers only two ways to change it: public initiative and parliamentary. Parliamentary is where the government can go and put its fingers, the executive. They abandoned that route, told that this is a public initiative, and they are confusing even the parliament. Because the public initiative parliament is not supposed to change anything, it's supposed to pass as it is. Then the parliamentary, they can change it. So now they are confused because this is state-driven, and yet it's also public-driven. So it's hard to understand that how our leaders have completely lost it in terms of what is called emotional leadership.
Okay.
The ability to feel the pain of the people you lead. That is not there.
Okay,
so how
they
do
seem...
go out into a referendum in the middle of this pandemic? We are waiting to see. Because you would have expected, even if this spike now, the band wave, most certainly is linked to these political rallies, which took place immediately. We controlled the curve. So as a country, we are really in trouble. My advice, to the president and his brother, Raila Odinga, abandon this thing now. Concentrate on the economy, concentrate on COVID-19. And we will thank you for that as a country.
Well, according to the proponents of BBI, reggae is still on. We'll definitely see how this breaks down.
Just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
For 1 minute.
Okay, okay.
Please, my good professor, if it is about the economy, there is no one point that we destroyed this economy like the 2007. That was the worst. it. And we will not, and I believe even you will not want a repeat of that come 2022.
All right.
So we need to change our ways. That is for sure. So about the economy, whoever thinks about what's the situation of the economy now, can we reflect the worst part that we had in 2007? We will not. And I don't think anybody would want a repeat of the destroying of the economy and lives, for that matter. Not just the economy, but even lives.
Okay. So,
and to me, the BBI has the answer.
Well, definitely. You're being idealistic right there, based on the 9 thematic points. But allow us to shift focus briefly, because we'll definitely get to talk about the political developments, even as we observe the latest intrigues surrounding the constitutional reforms process. Let's highlight something that touches on the economy, perhaps. Gloria, we just saw yesterday President Uhuru Kenyatta opening the country's first small arms factory, bearing in mind it is a 4 billion shillings plant, and the projections are it's expected to provide 100 direct jobs and 1,100 others in indirect employment through supply of raw materials. A boost to the manufacturing industry, one way or the other, and bearing in mind how Kenya spends in terms of the military spending. Just 2019-2020 financial year, we spent 121 billion, obviously shadowing our neighbors Uganda and Tanzania in terms of the budget set aside for the military. Talk to us about this. A step in a good direction, don't you think?
I want to just say a joke. Someone asked, we don't have money to open our hospitals and to, you know, get oxygen, but we have 4 billion to start up an arms factory. And there was a joke that, you know, because we are going to shoot corona. That shows you that, unfortunately, Kenyans are not well conversant with how you have some domino effects from certain initiatives. There is a positive towards this kind of initiatives. We're talking about 4 billion to set up a manufacturing company for arms. And the only thing that for me, I was really thinking when they gave us the stats, they said that I think the factory can produce up to 1,200 arms per year. I think
12,000.
12,000
yes.
per year.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that they were giving that this factory actually provided 100 direct jobs and 1,000 indirect jobs. And I was looking at those stats and looking at the money that was spent in that that project, and I thought just 100 direct jobs and just 12,000 arms. And when you look at the details of the arms, of the kind of weapons that they're actually producing, and I was doing a little bit of research. My husband is in the security industry, and we looked at the pricing of this kind of arms, and it was like, but it's actually cheaper to import these things. So there is some justification in terms of job creation, in terms of pushing our manufacturing industry. But those numbers, to be honest, Jesse, 100 direct jobs, I would say is for that kind of investment is peanuts. Let me just compare it, for instance, with the data center industry, which we have not tapped into, which we have completely not brought into Kenya, and I'm actually pushing for it. If you bring one data center, take, for instance, a Facebook data center to Kenya, we actually bring in 1,000 direct jobs. The investment is less than 4 billion, and indirect jobs goes to about 3,500. And when you look at the domino effect on the economy, it's actually more. So I think some of these initiatives require that we, especially within our ministries, within our government, that we actually look at the statistics and weigh in how much investment is going in, how much are we getting back out of it, even if it's just to have a blueprint and say, yes, we actually have an arms manufacturing company in this country, but does it really bring back the return on investment, you know? Yeah.
Well, the big question, return on investment, but you did highlight the domino effect, and according to the proponents, they sort of majored on the laying of the foundation for addressing the high cost of weapons acquisition, the free us from the complex foreign export approval processes, and provide Kenya with greater security sector independence. Perhaps let's bring in Kasim Tandaza. Your take on this briefly.
As we've said briefly, I think there is one point the first panelist missed here, that when I own a gun, it's not that I'm really a fighter or I'm going to kill somebody, but the mere fact that she knows or somebody knows that I'm armed, that is a deterrent. So I think for this particular venture, I don't think the emphasis would be in terms of the rate of returns. No, it is on what our neighbors or our enemies would also think about us seriously, that you are manufacturing our own arms. You know, when you are manufacturing your own, you know, you tailor-make it to suit your intentions and your possibilities. So to me, I think the main value of this venture is in terms of the security comfort that it will give the citizens, for that matter, for this country. Otherwise, if you are looking at it from just the point of investment and returns, then certainly I would agree with the panelists. But can we look at the bigger picture, which to me is very important?
Jesse, a point of correction.
Even with the no employment, if there's no security, I think security is number one in any venture. One, you start with the security before you go to any other thing. So me, I would really look at it in terms of it's being important in the providing the comfort issues on security.
All right. Jesse, just a point of correction.
Okay, briefly.
You can't tailor-make standard arms, you understand? You can't say now in Kenya our AK-47 is going to be like that, and because these are actually standard arms that are there. So what we're doing, we are actually replicating whatever is in the market at our own. So that's why I'm looking at the fact that what is the benefit? The benefit here is job creation. Benefits, like he said, might be a perception that, you know, now as a country we've matured enough not to import, but we have our own manufacturing plants. But it's not about tailor-making it in a way so that we can be, you know, it's okay. Funny that has come up.
Well, Professor, I'd urge you to hold on to your thoughts even as we talk about this. But definitely, in one way or the other, the local manufacturing has definitely received a jab in the arm. Even as we highlighted some of the materials that were produced locally in terms of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. So either way, we'll get more views right after this short break. But remember, when we come back, we take a deep look at the week that has been. A lot has definitely played out, not just political-wise, but Kenyans definitely taken to social media to hold the government to account in one way or the other. Many might argue it was misplaced, targeting the IMF, but we'll definitely look at the journey that is the Kenyan debt burden. Do stay with us for this and much more.